month of July 2017, I drove my old converted van deep into the heart of Pennsylvania's forests. I had camped here before a couple of years back when I was with my friends, and even then, something about this place had unsettled me. But that time, nothing much happened to us. So it was around 3 p.m. when I finally found the perfect spot. A narrow, barely there dirt road had taken me far from any main trails, deeper into the thick trees. I parked my van on a slight incline, close enough to a clearing where the late afternoon sun still filtered through, but with the thick woods surrounding me on all sides. The air was humid, the scent of damp earth and pine hanging heavy. I spent the rest of the afternoon setting up a small fire pit and organizing my van. By 6 p.m., I was sitting outside eating a sandwich, listening to the eerie quiet settle over the forest. Something about this place felt off. Not just the usual loneliness of being isolated, but a kind of oppressive stillness. Around 8:30 p.m., I cooked some barbecue for the night's dinner, the sizzle of the meat barely masking the oppressive silence around me. I stood there, flipping the food. A chilling sensation crawled up my spine, the distinct, skin-prickling feeling of being watched. My eyes darted left and right, scanning the shadowy tree line, but there was nothing. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to focus on my dinner. Later, after that, I crawled into my van and locked the doors. The night outside was pitch black. There was no moon, just the thick canopy overhead, suffocating any trace of light. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening. But just after that, when the noises started, it was a booming sound, like cannon fire echoing through the valley. A single, deep explosion that sent vibrations through my chest. Then, after a few seconds of silence, another. And another. It wasn't thunder. It wasn't gunfire. It was something else. Something bigger. My stomach twisted with unease, and I gritted my teeth, forcing myself to breathe evenly. And then came the chainsaw. The high-pitched, mechanical. It was coming from somewhere deep in the woods, far off but still too close for comfort. It ran for a few seconds, then stopped. Silence. Then again. Closer. I swallowed hard, my fingers gripping the blanket. Who the hell was out here, using a chainsaw in the middle of the night? By the middle of the night, the booming had stopped, and the chainsaw had gone silent. Something worse. A presence. An awareness. I could feel it pressing in, crawling under my skin. And then, I don't remember falling asleep. I don't remember closing my eyes. But suddenly, it was 3:30 a.m. I woke up by shock. I couldn't breathe. It felt like I was drowning, like my lungs were filling with thick, suffocating water. My hands clawed at the van door, desperate to escape, my body acting on instinct. I barely registered the pain, my knuckles slamming against metal, my nails scraping at the lock. My vision blurred, and I swore I heard something breathing. Not mine. Something wet, something deep, something too big to be human. And then I blacked out. When I woke up, it was sharply 6:14 a.m. The early morning light was filtering weakly through the shredded blinds of my van. My head throbbed, my body ached, and as I shifted, pain shot through my bruised knuckles. Then I saw the damage. My ceiling air vent was ripped apart, jagged edges of plastic hanging down like broken teeth. The inside of my window bore deep, ragged scratches as if something had tried to claw its way inside. The blinds weren't just torn, they were shredded, like something with massive, inhuman hands had grabbed them and ripped them to pieces. I scrambled out of the van, my legs shaky, my heart still hammering in my chest. I checked my carbon monoxide detector. Nothing. It hadn't gone off. No gas leaks, no explanation. Just this. The destruction. The bruises. The suffocating fear that still gripped me. And then I remembered. Years earlier, my friends and I had camped in this same area. We had woken up to strange sounds, footsteps circling our tents, soft but deliberate. And then that awful, high-pitched squeaking. Not an animal. Not anything we could recognize. We left in a hurry the next morning, shaken. But now, standing in the wreckage of my van, I knew this place was wrong. This place was something else. I didn't stay to figure it out. I left the place immediately. I was speeding down that dirt road and didn't stop. Not until I was miles away. Whatever happened that night, whatever had been out there, wasn't just a bad dream. It wasn't just my imagination. Something had been with me, and whatever it was, it had tried to get in. It was a mystery I still couldn't understand. And of course, I haven't been back since. I don't know how much of this will make sense. I don't even know if I fully believe what happened. But I need to put it down before the memories fade. I had been hiking through the deep woods of Colorado, taking on one of the lesser-traveled trails near the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. I wanted solitude, silence. I had just quit my job, burned every damn bridge on my way out, and I needed to escape, to be alone with my thoughts. The weight of failure, of anger, of bitterness sat heavy on my chest, and I needed the wilderness to strip it away. The story was too long ago, happened in 1999. The month was August. I started my trek early that morning, right as the sun was creeping over the peaks. The trail was rough, mostly unmarked, and stretched about 15 miles through dense forest, winding up and around steep ravines. I had planned to do the whole stretch in 2 days, camping out at the midpoint before heading back the next morning. I had all my gear, enough food, water, and a loaded revolver, not because I was expecting trouble, but because I didn't trust these woods. The first few hours passed uneventfully. By noon, I was a good 7 miles in, the sun high above. That's when I noticed the first oddity. The birds had stopped singing. No rustling in the underbrush. No chittering squirrels. Just silence. A dead, suffocating silence. I kept moving, trying to ignore it, but the deeper I went, the more the unease settled into my bones. It wasn't just the absence of sound. It was the way the trees loomed twisted, gnarled things that seemed to reach for me with skeletal limbs. By late afternoon, I had reached the spot where I planned to set up camp. A small clearing near a dried-up creek bed, far enough from the main trail to ensure solitude. I set up my tent, built a small fire, and forced myself to eat, though I wasn't hungry. That feeling hadn't left me. If anything, it had grown stronger, settling into my chest like a weight I couldn't shake. Night fell fast, swallowing the forest in an abyss of blackness. I had expected the usual nocturnal sounds, crickets, owls, but there was nothing. Just silence. I barely slept. Every creak made my hand tighten around the grip of my revolver. And then, at some point in the early hours, just as exhaustion was pulling me under, I heard it. A voice, whispering, saying my name. My blood turned to ice. I shot upright, ears straining to catch it again, but there was nothing. Just the wind. Just my ragged breath. I forced myself to lie back down, telling myself it had nothing, but it wasn't. The next day, I packed up and decided to head back early. I wasn't going to wait for whatever was out there to come any closer. The hike back felt longer, heavier. Every step was harder, every breath more labored. Then, somewhere around the halfway point, it happened. The forest around me blurred, like a heat mirage rippling through the air. The trees bent, twisted, their colors bleeding together. My vision darkened at the edges. My stomach lurched as a wave of nausea, and then, gray. Everything was gray. The trail was gone. The sky, if it even was a sky, was a dark, oppressive slate. The trees around me were massive, looming things. The ground beneath my feet was soft, spongy, wrong. And then the voice came again. Louder, closer, right in my damn ear. My name, A whisper, then a hiss, then a guttural snarl. I spun around, and that's when I saw it. A hand, if you could call it that. A massive hairy thing, with fingers too long, too human-like but not quite human. The nails were black, jagged, too long. It reached for me, slow, deliberate. I could feel the heat radiating off it, the damp, putrid smell of decay and earth filling my nostrils. I tried to move, but my body was frozen, my muscles locked, my breath trapped in my chest. My heart pounded, but I couldn't so much as twitch. And then, just as it was about to grab me, darkness, a void swallowing me whole. My vision blurred, twisted. My ears rang with some deafening, inhuman sound, something between a growl and a scream. And then, nothing. When I woke up, I was back on the trail, sunlight filtering through the trees. Everything like to be normal, birds chirping, the sounds of the wind through the branches. I don't know how long I lay there, staring at the sky, trying to piece together what the hell had happened. My body ached like I'd been dropped from a great height. My head throbbed. I had. I didn't stop to rest, didn't stop to think. I ran, as fast and as hard as my legs would carry me. I didn't care if I collapsed. I didn't care if my lungs burned. I just ran. I made it back to my car. I didn't stop driving until I hit the nearest town where one of my friends lived. I crashed at his place, barely speaking, barely eating. I finally told him what happened. He just said I was overtired, hallucinating. He gave me some sleeping pills, told me to get some rest. I just slept for 2 days continuously. And after that, I never went back. That trail, it's dead to me. I don't hike anymore. I don't camp. I don't go into that woods. That trail, it doesn't exist to me anymore. It's a dead trail, one I will never walk again. Because something out there knows my name too. It was 2014 when I first encountered something that still grips my soul, something I can't forget no matter how hard I try. My name is Marie Elizabeth, and what happened to me that night isn't just some nightmare or wild imagination. It was as real as the air I breathe. I'll never forget the terror that flooded my veins the moment it all began. I was driving alone through the desolate backroads of Maine, not far from Mount Katahdin. The night was dark, thick with silence, broken only by the rumbling engine of my truck. Hours on the road, and the emptiness of it all started to mess with my head. But I had no idea that my life would be forever changed by a single, horrifying moment. Suddenly, my truck sputtered and died right in the middle of nowhere. No service, no sign of another soul for miles. My pulse was already racing as I slammed my palms against the steering wheel in frustration. I had no choice but to get out and check the engine, cursing under my breath. I popped open the hood, praying it was something simple like a busted wire or a loose belt. But then I saw it. A gray figure moved quickly in the woods, darting across the road. It wasn't a deer. It wasn't any animal I recognized. It was too fast, too sleek, too wrong. My heart stopped in my chest as I blinked, trying to make sense of what I'd just seen. And then the growl. A low, rumbling growl that came from somewhere far too close. My body went rigid. My heart slammed against my ribs as I turned my head. That's when I saw it, the thing I can never explain. A massive, wolf-like creature, but it wasn't any wolf I'd ever seen. Its fur was a sickly gray, blending into the shadows like it was part of the night itself. The creature had an elongated snout, filled with jagged teeth, sharp and gleaming like daggers. Its eyes. Oh, God, those eyes. They weren't like the eyes of any animal I'd seen. They glowed. Not like a cat's or a dog's, but with a light that seemed unnatural, ancient. The very essence of terror. I froze. The growl rumbled through the air, so deep and menacing that I thought my chest would collapse under its weight. I couldn't even move. Before I could process what was happening, I saw more eyes. More glowing eyes, scattered in the shadows, watching, waiting. My heart beat in my throat. The very air around me seemed to pulse with something darker, something far worse than anything I'd ever imagined. I knew I had to get out of there. But how? Just as the creature took a step toward me, something saved me, or maybe it damned me further. A truck's headlights cut through the night, and the beast flinched. The glowing eyes blinked and disappeared into the woods. Without a second thought, I rushed back into my truck, hands shaking as I tried to restart the engine. The growl echoed in my mind, and somehow, by sheer luck, my truck sputtered to life. I didn't even look back. I sped off like a madwoman, praying I'd survive. I didn't understand what I had just encountered. I couldn't explain it, and I'm sure people thought I was losing my mind when I tried to tell them. My family called it just a dog, but I knew the truth. Whatever I saw that night wasn't from this world. It was something dark, something unnatural. But that wasn't the end. No, it was only the beginning. Fast forward 4 years, and I decided to go camping again. I was trying to shake the fear that had haunted me since that night. I thought maybe I could face it, confront it, move on. So I headed back to the same campsite, thinking maybe time had erased the terror. But deep down, I was lying to myself. The truth is, I never forgot. I'd convinced myself that after all these years, the area had been secured, that it would be safe. But I was dead wrong. The campsite was surrounded by tall trees, and the night was even darker than I remembered. There was an unsettling chill in the air, the kind of cold that creeps into your bones and settles there, gnawing at you. I felt it, the unmistakable sensation that I was being watched. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but I pushed them down, determined to prove I wasn't afraid. The silence around me was suffocating, the kind of quiet that feels like the world is holding its breath. I set up camp, trying to shake the feeling that something was wrong. But as night fell, it became impossible to ignore. Strange noises started, twigs snapping, something moving in the underbrush. It was 11 p.m., and I needed to use the bathroom. That's when things took a turn for the worse. I walked toward the bathroom, my footsteps crunching on the leaves. That's when I saw it, a patch of absolute darkness. It wasn't a shadow. It wasn't just an absence of light. It was a void, an unnatural hole that sucked in everything around it, like it didn't belong in this world. My heart skipped a beat. I stopped dead in my tracks, staring at it in disbelief. It was like staring into the abyss itself. The dark spot was different from everything else around it. It stood out like a scar on the earth. It wasn't natural. No animal, no weather, nothing could explain that. It wasn't supposed to be there. I felt the sweat break out on my skin, my pulse thundering in my ears. It was like the void was staring back at me, pulling me in, watching me. I didn't wait for it to do more. I turned and ran, faster than I thought was possible. My heart was pounding in my throat, each step feeling like my last. When I looked back, the void was gone, but the terror stayed. The cold, oppressive feeling that something terrible had just happened lingered in the air around me. I didn't go to the bathroom. I didn't even stop to breathe. I ran back to my tent, my hands shaking uncontrollably as I packed up. I tried to pretend nothing was wrong, but my mind kept flashing back to what I'd seen. And then it hit me again, the creature. The thing that I had seen 4 years ago. That place, that damn campsite, was cursed. It was terror. Pure terror. That place had something dark, something ancient. Something that didn't belong. I've tried to forget. I've tried to bury it, but I can't. And now I'm warning you. If you think for even a second that you can handle whatever's waiting for you in the woods of Maine, think again. Whatever I saw, whatever still lurks in those woods, it's not a joke. It's not a myth. It's not some local legend. Trust me when I say you don't want to meet whatever is waiting in the dark corners of that place. I couldn't escape it, and you won't either. So, if you think you're brave enough, if you think you can handle it, go ahead. But don't say I didn't warn you. You won't come back the same. If you come back at all, don't go. Just don't.